Well, hey, thanks for joining me here on the little channel again. If you're following along, if this is your first one, I'm making these videos as pops for any future grandchild I might have. But hey, I know how YouTube attention spans go, so I'm going to get right to the point. We're going to do the lesson today right here in the woodshed. I thought of this when I was stacking wood out here not long ago. The first thing I want to cover then is how I kind of doubt myself for doing these, because sometimes these lessons are so simple in a way, but not always, that, there's a lot of stuff going on in this world. And I thought, what difference are those going to make? Maybe even to your grandchildren. And here's why I decided to come back, and I'll be back again. And that's just because I truly believe these qualities in life, if I didn't believe in them, I wouldn't teach them to my grandchildren, and I wouldn't have taught them to my children. No matter what comes our way, what comes my way, what comes your way, these lessons hold true. So let's talk wood, all right? Enough of that. As I said, as I was talking or stacking this wood out not too long ago, I thought about this lesson. Now, to my grandchildren, I learned this lesson from my dad, which would be your great-grandfather. And I don't even know my great-grandfather's name. So I would be thrilled to teach you something he taught me. Now, he just taught me how to stack the wood, which it's important because when I was stacking wood as a little boy, I figured out pretty quick, and Dad taught me too, that the pieces just fit together if you put them together right. You just can't throw them together, because if you throw them together, I can tell you what's going to happen. That stack or that stack, it's going to be laying on the ground. And I can tell you that from experience, because I had some stacked out here this fall that weren't finished, and they were there about a week. The wind blew hard, and some of it fell down. Now, the worst part of a stack that falls down is you've already gone to the work of doing it once. Now you have to clean it up and stack it again. So what's that have to do? You think, man, I don't need a wood stacking lesson. I know, but here's the deal. Stacking wood, it's a lot like putting together pieces of your life or putting together pieces of my life. We have a lot of little pieces, and how we decide to put them together makes all the difference as to whether everything holds together or where everything falls apart. So whenever we're putting our little pieces of our lives together, this would be what I'm teaching my grandchild. Be very careful the kind of things you try to put together. If you're putting two logs together and you put two round pieces together, it's not stable and it doesn't stay there. We do the same thing with our lives sometimes. We take two things, we try to mash them together, and we don't understand why things fall apart. A long time ago, I used to have a pretty wicked language. Let me just put it that way. I could make sailors blush if I chose to. There came a day when I decided I knew that was a choice, because if I didn't want to be that way, I wasn't that way. Like I wasn't ever that way around my mother. So I had learned to stack logs a certain way. And after a while, I could see that the stack wasn't going to stand up. I was putting foul language into the stack of my life, and I didn't want it anymore. I needed to restack it so that it was more stable for the kind of life that I wanted to live. We all have pieces. If you're my grandchild, whenever your grandma and I were raising your mom or dad, we had a lot of things to do. We had a lot of shuffling to do. They had practice, they had band, they had things going on at school. We had to shuffle. We had a lot of pieces of our lives that we had to learn to put together. Some were great big and some were small. And there's a way to make them all fit together, but if you don't try and you don't pay attention, you end up with a mess, and you just have to restack it. And I've seen some stacks, and I've had some stacks, not of wood, but of life, that just didn't end up looking like they should. Some of them ended up on the ground. So what I want to turn to now is the stack that I've been taking off of, right? That's a stack that I've been taking off of this winter. That's where I'm at on it. Now, behind it, I think, let me go right there. There you go, right there. That log right there, as you can see, there's some of them right in the middle of those two stacks. I didn't stack them wrong, and they didn't fall over. Those are there for a reason. Those are logs that got split strange. They might have had a knot on the side of them, or they just have an odd shape. It looks like they fell in between those two rows, but they didn't. I put them there. I put them there for two reasons. One, because they just don't fit in a stack. If you put them in a stack, everything gets unstable. And I'm going to tell you, kiddo, we do the same thing in life. Sometimes there's just logs, there's pieces of life that just don't fit. And if we try to jam them in with everything else we have going on in life, it just makes everything unstable. I've tried it in wood piles and I've tried it in my life. And guess what? Yeah, that stack of wood, it ends up on the ground because those pieces are unstable. Now, in your life, maybe that's somebody that, maybe that was what somebody did in their life with me. Whenever I had that foul mouth and I wasn't the kind of person maybe they wanted around them all the time. At that point in time, if they would have thrown me in between their stacks because I made them unstable, I wouldn't blame them a bit. You still need those stacks. It helps because it stabilizes some other things, but you can't mix them in with everything else because when you do, the whole pile can fall over. They have a worth because I can still burn them. In fact, some of those burn longer than anything else out here, but they don't have a place in the stack because they just ruin the atmosphere. They make everything unstable. Now, the last thing I'm going to tell you is about that right there. You can probably see how that's stacked a little different. Honestly, I don't even know what to call that. Why? My father didn't do that. We always had posts or something that we stacked the end of the logs against. Now, I don't have that luxury here. I do that out in the yard where I can drive posts. But here, it's concrete. Can't drive a post. And I'm not going to buy a bunch of wood racks for all the wood that I have out here. So I saw those end posts that somebody else had done, and I just kind of copied them. I didn't learn it from anybody. What I did was I just looked at what somebody else did and thought, you know what? That's a good idea. I don't do them the best. I have to work on them, but they do serve a purpose. So what I'm telling you, what I've learned is if you get into something and you're really not sure, pay attention to somebody who's doing it right. That's what I'd tell you if you were my grandchild. Sometimes you see something good you need to do. Maybe you've done it before. I've stacked wood since I was 8 or 9 years old. But I learned something new from somebody else. Now I use it at my own place. So I hope that you've learned, as I did, a little lesson from the wood pile today. Those little lessons that go along with us, they come to my mind anyway, and I hope they come to yours. As I stacked wood here a couple weeks ago, I thought, that's what I'd tell my grandchild. So that's what I'll tell you. Now, I have a couple more coming up. So we're going to talk about fishing poles, and we're going to talk about a conversation from an airport. But those are for another day. So continuing with the theme. If you were my grandchild, I'd tell you right now, Grandma has some cookie bars in there. And I believe we could have some apple crisps too, if you'd rather have that. So that's enough work in the wood shop, kiddo. Let's get to the house. So till next time, guys. See ya.